On Father's Day, my parents told my teen son, "You aren't really family." He whispered, "Dad, what do they mean?" I didn't shout. I packed our bags. The next morning, they were banned from my house. The living room smelled like grilled steak and cheap whiskey. Father's Day, their idea, felt like a forced truce, complete with fake smiles and strained silence. Mason, my son, had just handed me a homemade card when Joanne, my mom, commented on continuing the bloodline. Richard chuckled. Mason looked up, confused. The next moment shattered everything. I don't remember setting down my fork. I don't remember standing up. I just remember Mason's voice. Small, cracked, the kind of sound that doesn't belong to a 14-year-old. "Dad, what do they mean?" And Joanne looked smugly satisfied, like she'd finally unloaded the truth she'd been sitting on for years. Richard poured himself another drink, not even glancing up. Could have lost it. I could have flipped the table, screamed, and cursed them out. But instead, I went silent. My whole body buzzed with adrenaline, but I didn't let it loose. I looked at Mason, nodded once and said, "Go pack your things." He stared at me, stunned. But I didn't repeat myself. I didn't have to. The look in my eyes said everything. We left half a meal on the table and drove back to the house in dead silence. I wanted to say something, anything, to make it feel less heavy. But what do you say when your own parents tell your son he's not real? Mason had been mine since the day I held him, hours old, his tiny hand curling instinctively around my pinky. I didn't make him, I chose him. When Lindsay left us, saying she wasn't cut out for motherhood, I didn't blink. I stepped up, changed my job, restructured my life, learned how to braid hair before he grew into his first words. I did everything, and I did it without hesitation. But my parents, they never fully accepted him. At first, it was quiet. Little jabs like, "You still have time for your own, Caleb?" Or, "Imagine having someone who actually looked like you." I made excuses. They're from another generation. They don't mean harm. They'll come around. They didn't. That night, Mason shut himself in his room. I could hear him moving around, then silence. Then the sound of muffled crying. I sat outside his door for almost an hour. I knocked once. "Go away," he said. Not angrily, just broken. I didn't go away. I sat down, leaned my back against the door, and just waited. "You know they're wrong, right?" I finally said. "You know you're mine. No one gets to tell you different." Nothing, just breathing. "You saved my life, Mason, not the other way around." A few minutes later, I heard the quiet creak of his bed as he lay down. That was all. He didn't open the door. I didn't sleep. The next morning I sent a message, short, cold, final. "From this point forward, you are not to contact me or Mason. You are not welcome in our home. Your comments were unforgivable. We are done." Joanne responded 3 hours later. "You're overreacting. We didn't mean anything cruel. But truth matters, Caleb. Blood matters. One day he'll need to know that." That was her whole concern. Truth, not love, not the damage she did. Just preserving her twisted version of legacy. Richard didn't message. He left a voicemail instead. Slurred, likely drunk, the way he always got when conflict hit. "You can't cut us out forever. He'll be curious. He'll wonder what else you've lied about." I didn't delete it. Something about his tone felt off. Not threatening, not quite, but not passive either. Later that night, I walked past Mason's room and saw the glow of his laptop under the covers. I gently knocked before stepping in. "Hey," I said, trying not to startle him. "You okay?" He blinked at me, startled, then tilted the screen slightly. I caught a glimpse. A legal website, something about parental rights termination and unfit guardianship. My stomach dropped. "Mason," I said carefully, "why are you reading that?" He didn't look at me. I wanted to know what they meant, like legally. If you could lose me, if I'm not really yours on paper. "You are," I said immediately. "I signed the papers. I did the home visits. I held you in my arms before you even had a name. Every inch of you is mine." But they made it sound like you're just temporary, like it's not permanent. I crossed the room, sat on the edge of his bed. "There's nothing temporary about what we are. You are my son. You will always be my son." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe it. Not completely. Not after what they'd said. The rot had begun. The seed was planted. I stayed in his room that night, sleeping in the beanbag chair while he finally drifted off. The glow of the computer screen stayed burned into my mind. I realized then, this wasn't over. This wasn't just a cruel comment at dinner. This was a campaign. A long game. And I'd let them get this close. Never again. 2 days later, the phone calls started. Friends. Cousins. One even said, "I heard you're isolating Mason." My parents had moved fast, and they were framing me as the abuser. I thought cutting them off would end things. I was wrong. The first call came from my cousin Julia. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but she opened with, "Hey, I just wanted to ask, is everything okay with Mason?" That's how I knew. They'd started. I kept it short. "He's fine." "Why?" She hesitated. Aunt Joanne called. She said you're going through something. Like mentally. That you're—" She stopped herself. "Not letting Mason talk to anyone anymore. That he's confused. Scared." I let out a dry laugh. Scared? He's not the one calling people behind my back. I didn't say I believed her, she added quickly. It just worried me. I figured I should hear your side. I thanked her for calling, then hung up, my hands already shaking. The anger hadn't even fully formed yet. Just a cold, dull pressure behind my ribs. Mason walked into the kitchen as I set the phone down. "Was that Grandma again?" he asked. I shook my head. No. Someone she got to. By that evening, I'd seen 3 vague Facebook posts. All from relatives I hadn't spoken to since Mason was a toddler. The captions all read the same tune. Family is about honesty, even when it hurts. Sometimes we watch loved ones spiral and can't do anything about it. A child deserves the truth, not lies and isolation. They didn't tag me. Of course not. That would have been too direct. But the comment sections were filled with mutual relatives saying things like, "Stay strong, Joanne," or "Praying for that boy." One post even had a blurry photo from Father's Day. Mason is sitting at the table, looking confused. It had been taken from across the room, clearly without our knowledge. Probably by Richard. The caption read, "Moments before the truth hit. Pray for healing." I clenched my fists until my knuckles cracked. Then I reported the photo and started blocking people. The next day, Mason came home from school quietly. Too quiet. When I asked how his day went, he said, "Fine," and locked himself in his room. I waited until dinner before knocking. He finally opened the door and just looked at me, like he was searching my face for something. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I blinked. "Yeah. Why wouldn't I be?" He shrugged. "People at school are saying stuff. That you're angry all the time. Controlling." I felt the ground shift under my feet. "Who told them that?" I asked. "I don't know. Just got around. Someone said their parents were talking about you." He didn't look angry. He looked confused. Like he didn't know what to believe anymore. I walked toward him slowly. "Mason, listen to me. None of that's true. You know me better than anyone. Have I ever tried to control you?" "No," he said quickly. Then, after a beat, "But you are angry a lot lately." I sighed, crouching slightly to meet his eyes. "I'm angry because I'm fighting for you. Because people who are supposed to love you are trying to hurt you. And I let them get close enough to try." He nodded, slowly. "Okay." But I could see it, the hesitation, the seed of doubt that had taken root. No matter what I said, their poison was already in him. That night, I was on the phone with my lawyer friend Luke, trying to get advice on a cease and desist. My voice was low, careful, but not careful enough. I heard a soft shuffle and turned to see Mason standing in the hallway, just out of sight, listening. I ended the call quickly, then went to him. "I wasn't going to let them come back," I said preemptively. "If that's what you thought." Mason didn't respond. "You can ask me anything," I added. "You never have to wonder where I stand." He nodded, but still walked past me in silence. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Joanne. She picked up on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd get off your high horse," she said casually. "You're spreading lies about me, about Mason. You're dragging my parenting through the mud because I told you to stay the hell away. You're the one isolating him, Caleb. We're just trying to help." "Help?" I I snapped. You called me unstable. You posted a photo of him on Facebook without our consent. You're turning our family against me. Joanne's voice didn't waver. This isn't about you. It's about what's best for the boy. I almost laughed. He's not the boy. He's my son. A new voice cut in, Richard. I hadn't even realized he was on the line. You'll see it eventually, he said. You'll understand when he grows up and hates you for keeping him from us. My hand clenched around the phone. You think this is about me being selfish? You told him he wasn't family. You broke something in him. He deserves to know the truth, Joanne said. Blood matters. No, I said. Love matters. And you don't have any. I hung up. Then I blocked their numbers. But the damage had already started to seep in. I found Mason that night in bed, awake, eyes red. He was scrolling through some old pictures on his phone. Photos from holidays past, where Joanne's smile looked genuine, where Richard had actually played with him in the backyard. Were they always like this? He asked. I sat down at the foot of his bed. No, I said. They were worse. It came in a white envelope, thick paper, gold-embossed firm logo, addressed to both me and Mason. I already knew what it was. Still, I opened it like I didn't. And just like that, they escalated it into a war. The first line read like a punch to the gut. This letter serves as formal notice of our client's intention to pursue court-mandated visitation under the state's grandparents' rights provisions. They hadn't even tried to talk. No warning. No mediation request. Just straight to attorneys and threats. Mason's name was printed right beneath mine, as if he'd been served. As if he were some shared property to be divided. The letter was dressed up in legal language, but the intent was crystal clear. We are concerned about Mason's emotional development under the current circumstances. We believe a consistent relationship with his biological grandparents is in his best interest. We urge Mr. Carver to reconsider his emotionally reactionary stance. Emotionally reactionary. They'd painted me as unstable in print. Permanently, professionally, like I was some hysterical barrier between Mason and his real family. I drove to my lawyer's office the next day with the letter still clenched in my fist. Helen, the attorney I'd used for Mason's adoption all those years ago, read it twice. Then she exhaled through her nose. They're bluffing, she said. Mostly. Grandparents' rights are difficult to enforce unless you're found unfit, or the child has a pre-existing, critical relationship with them. They're not bluffing, I said. They're just playing the long game. She leaned back, nodding slightly. Fair. If they're willing to drag this into court, they can make your life miserable. And they could get temporary visitation, maybe even interviews with Mason. I stared at her. Interviews? With a court-appointed family evaluator. Mason could be asked to speak to a therapist or social worker. It won't be like a criminal trial, but it will feel like one. Especially to him. My stomach sank. They're counting on that, aren't they? I said. That I won't want to put him through it. Helen didn't answer. She didn't need to. I didn't tell Mason about the letter. Not yet. I put it in a locked drawer in my bedroom, thinking I could buy time. Maybe consult a second lawyer, draft a response. I didn't want to dump more weight on his shoulders while he was still dealing with the fallout from the smear campaign. But Mason found it anyway. I came home from work to find him sitting on the couch, the letter in his lap. His jaw clenched. You were hiding this? He said. I closed the door quietly behind me. It's not what you think. He stood up. They want visitation? They want a court to make me see them. Mason, they're saying you're emotionally unstable. They're trying to get a judge to make you let them in. I was going to tell you, I said. He stepped back like I'd slapped him. You said I could trust you. You can. Then why did you lie? That broke me more than I expected. The betrayal in his voice wasn't directed at them. It was at me. Because I'd made the call to hide the truth, even if only temporarily. And that tiny wedge they'd planted back on Father's Day? It had just split a little deeper. We didn't speak for hours. Mason shut himself in his room. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter spread out again, rereading it until the words blurred. At midnight I knocked. No answer. I opened the door anyway. He was awake, sitting on the floor beside his bed, scrolling through messages on his phone. I should have told you the second it arrived, I said. Why didn't you? he asked quietly. Because I wanted to protect you. You think that's protection? Making decisions for me? He was right and I knew it. I'd done exactly what they accused me of, treating him like he was too fragile to handle the truth. I sat down across from him. Not above. Eye level. I panicked. I said. It felt like everything was closing in. Lawyers, accusations, people who don't know us saying you're not mine. I got scared. And I made the wrong call. He stared at me. You're not a thing I'm trying to protect, I added. You're a person I'm trying to walk beside. I forgot that. His expression cracked just slightly. I don't want to see them, he said. Never. You won't, I said. Not unless you decide to. And if they try again? I paused. If they try again, I said slowly, then we go to war. Together. The next morning, I started building a legal file. Copies of everything, texts, voicemails, social posts. I took screenshots, printed them, and logged them. I dug out the adoption paperwork, full custody records, and every signed form with my name and Mason's. I called Helen again. I want to prepare like they're serious, I told her. Because I don't think this ends with one letter. She agreed. Neither of us said it aloud, but we both knew what this was now. It wasn't about visitation. It was about control. Elena hadn't called me in 4 years. We weren't enemies, just casualties of our parents' control. When she texted, "We need to talk. It's about Mason." I felt the old tension coil in my chest again, but I called her anyway. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. Not shaky, just cautious, like she didn't want to break whatever fragile peace we were stepping into. Before I say anything, she started. I want you to know, I didn't ask for any of this. I haven't spoken to them since the Christmas after Mom got sick. I waited. She sighed. They're telling people I'm testifying against you. That took me a second to process. What? Yep, she said flatly. Apparently. I'm planning to go to court and talk about your emotional instability. Funny, since I haven't seen you in years. I leaned against the kitchen counter. What the hell are they doing? Trying to look legitimate, she said. They know their case is flimsy, so they're dropping my name to make it sound like the whole family is backing them up. And you're not. Of course I'm not. I almost laughed at how quickly she said it. Almost. She paused again, then added, but that's not the worst part. She sent me an audio file. 1 minute, 24 seconds long. I shouldn't have it, she said. Dad sent it to me by mistake. He meant to forward it to someone else. I hit play. The voice was unmistakably Richard's. Calm. Calculated. The same voice he used when he told my second-grade teacher I was just going through a phase, when I flinched every time someone raised their voice. I don't care how he files it, he said to someone on the other end of the call. If we can establish instability or neglect, we can make the case for temporary foster placement. Once the boy's out of that house, it's a completely different ballgame. A pause. Exactly. We get the boy placed somewhere better, safer, somewhere we can reach him. My skin went cold. This has to look legitimate. No outbursts, no Facebook rants. We let the legal process play out, and we position ourselves as the rational ones. The ones who care. Click. I played it twice before saying anything. When I finally spoke, my voice felt like sandpaper. He's trying to get Mason put in foster care. I know, Elena said. That's why I called. I forwarded the message to Helen, who called back 10 minutes later. I wish I could say this is empty talk, she said. But it's not. If they can manufacture concern, school complaints, false reports, anonymous tips, the court could place Mason in temporary care while they investigate. They'd rip him out of his life? If a judge believes he's in danger, yes. Even if just for a week or two. But that would be enough for your parents. They don't want custody, they want leverage. And Mason in foster care would be the nuclear option. I felt like I couldn't breathe. How do I stop this? Helen didn't hesitate. We make you bulletproof. No gray areas. No doubt. And we start now. Elena texted me again later that night. I want to testify. For you. I stared at the screen like it was in another language. She followed up with a longer message. I stayed quiet because it was easier. I let them guilt me into silence, into distance. But I'm not going to be a weapon for them. Not anymore. If you need me, I'll stand up. I didn't reply for a long time. Not because I didn't believe her, but because some part of me had already buried the idea of family ever fighting for me. The next day, I bought cameras. 3 indoor, motion-triggered security cams. 2 outdoor. I installed them myself, entryways, living room, kitchen, backyard. I told Mason what I was doing and why. He didn't even flinch. "Let them try," he said. "We'll bury them with footage." I started documenting everything. Every interaction with Mason, school pickups, dinner conversations, even mundane things like grocery lists and medication refills. I kept a digital journal, time-stamped. I scanned every document, every email, every passive-aggressive message from Richard or my mother's concerned church friends. I wasn't just preparing for a legal defense. I was building a war chest. 3 days later, a letter showed up in Mason's school file. It was anonymous, unsigned, typed, full of vague concerns about emotional outbursts at home and inconsistent parenting. The school counselor flagged it as suspicious but legally had to report it. I already had the cameras installed. That night, I pulled the footage. Mason was in his room playing guitar the entire evening in question. I was in the living room reading a case study with my laptop open. No shouting, no chaos, no neglect. I labeled the clip, uploaded it to a secure drive, and sent it to Helen with a short message. "The games have started." I didn't sleep much that week. I kept thinking about how easily they could have manipulated this if I hadn't known what was coming. How many people had lost kids, temporarily or permanently, because of false concern wrapped in respectable language. And I kept thinking about Mason, how he didn't ask for any of this, and how I'd burn down the entire fucking courthouse before I let them touch him. The court hearing was set for a Thursday morning. I didn't sleep the night before, neither did Mason. He sat in silence, headphones on, staring at the wall. I knew then this wasn't just about custody. This was about making him feel chosen. Again. We got there early. Helen had coached me for hours the night before. What to say, what not to say, how to keep my composure even if Richard tried to provoke me. But nothing could have prepared me for seeing them already seated in the courtroom, calm and smug like they were in a PDA meeting, not trying to tear a teenager out of his home. Richard was in a tailored navy suit. Joan wore a beige cardigan with pearls, like she was auditioning for a political campaign ad. Both of them were flanked by their lawyer, and behind them, I spotted a man I didn't recognize, flipping through a notepad. "He's the psychologist," Helen whispered, "hired by them." Of course, the proceedings started. Their side went first. Richard painted a picture of a loving, concerned family, one who had tried everything to stay involved, only to be pushed out by their troubled, unstable son and his reckless decision to take on a traumatized teen without proper support. "He isolates the boy," Richard said. "He doesn't let us speak to him. He's cut Mason off from the rest of his biological family, and we believe he's unwell." Joan chimed in with crocodile tears. "We love Mason. We just want what's best for him. And that means stable, healthy surroundings." Then came the cherry-picked texts, old ones from the year Mason first moved in. One where I vented to a friend about being overwhelmed. One where Mason said he didn't think he could stay here, completely out of context. Then the psychologist spoke. A man paid to be concerned. He read from his notes like a poorly scripted monologue. While I have not had the opportunity to interview the child personally, the presented material raises red flags regarding emotional dependence, potential enmeshment, and a lack of protective structure. Translation. He'd seen what Richard wanted him to see, and he said exactly what they paid for. I kept my mouth shut. I clenched my jaw so hard my molars ached. But Helen stood up like a damn warrior when it was our turn. She dismantled every accusation, walked the judge through the timeline, the sabotage attempts, the anonymous letters, and the falsified reports. She presented the video evidence calmly, clinically. She played the voicemail. She didn't even raise her voice. Then she called Elena to the stand. I held my breath. Elena's voice was steady, but her hands trembled when she raised them to take the oath. She didn't dress up for the court. She wore black jeans, boots, and a gray sweater. She looked like herself. She started slow. "I'm Caleb's sister. We haven't been close in recent years, but I know who he is. And I know who our parents are." Then came the storm. She told the court what it was like growing up in that house. The guilt, the silent treatment, the gaslighting. The conditional love always tied to obedience. She admitted she stayed away out of fear, that she was manipulated into silence, that she watched our parents slowly rewrite reality until they believed they were saints, not the narcissistic, controlling tyrants they really were. I wasn't brave enough to stand up to them until now, she said, voice cracking. But if Mason stays with Caleb, he has a chance to grow up free from that cycle. If he ends up with them, even part-time, they'll twist him until he breaks. The courtroom was silent. Even Richard looked rattled. The judge leaned back in his chair and exhaled through his nose. His face was unreadable for a long moment. Then he spoke. This court does not take lightly the termination of contact between a child and their grandparents. But in this case, I find the behavior of the petitioners to be coercive, deceptive, and emotionally harmful. The motion for visitation is denied, permanently. He turned to look directly at Richard and Joanne. This child deserves peace, and you are the disruption. Gavel. Done. Outside, the sun was too bright. We barely made it 10 steps from the courthouse doors before Joanne came marching across the parking lot like a heat-seeking missile. Are you happy now? She hissed. You've ruined everything. I didn't say a word. She shoved her finger in my face. One day, he'll understand what we were trying to do, and he'll hate you for keeping us out. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked her in the eye and said, he already knows, and he's never going back. She stared at me for a second, like she wanted to slap me, then turned and stormed off. Richard didn't even look at me. He just got in the car and slammed the door. Back home, Mason sat at the kitchen table, running a finger over the grain in the wood. His eyes were red but dry. He wasn't a kid who cried easily. Is it over? He asked. I nodded. It's over. He looked down. Will they come back? I sat down beside him. Only if we let them. He didn't look up. Are we gonna? I shook my head. No, kid. We won't. He let out a shaky breath, then said something I'll never forget. Thanks for choosing me. I felt my throat close up. I put my hand on his shoulder and squeezed. Every damn time. What would you do if your parents tried to take your child away? Just because he wasn't blood? Should Caleb have cut them off sooner? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit subscribe for more intense life stories like this one.